Right, so the pro-abortion lobby in the UK continues to expose its inhumanity by now going on to excuse blatant cases of infanticide. This is something that you've written about in The Critic before, Lois, very compellingly. That's what prompted this segment. And this is going to be quite a dark one, but I think it's quite important regarding the legislation and what's coming down the pipe from a politician that I can only describe as a devouring mother figure. So let's look at the recent cases. If you'd like to learn more about the abortion debate, you can give us £5 a month to help keep the lights on, bring fantastic guests like Lois in, and you get access to all of our premium content. This was something from last August, so it's nearly a year old now. But Josh and I, as part of his Contemplations series, sat down and discussed the morality and the science of abortion. And Josh was a bit softer on the question. I think that Josh eventually will hopefully come around to my position. My position is just humility. I never know when, beyond conception, personhood is conferred. So I'd rather err on the side of never taking the risk of snuffing out an innocent human life. So I just think it's always wrong. But it was a very compelling discussion, very good faith, and Josh and I became even better friends after this. So on to the first one. There's been a recent case in the States, and a Democrat activist hack decided to tweet out, wow, a teenager in Nebraska was sentenced to 90 days in jail for using an abortion pill. This is the America Republicans want. Republicans will not let women control their own bodies. According to them, teenagers are old enough to be mothers. It's horrifying. Now, I love Community Notes, because Community Notes always corrects propaganda. And so you can click the story from The Guardian, but I went to a National Review summary of the case, and it turns out that no, the woman was not prosecuted for having an abortion pill. Her mother illegally procured abortion pills, and she quite gleefully terminated the life of her unborn child, which is pretty tragic. So Burgess here violated Nebraska's abortion law, which has been in effect since 2010. So this hasn't violated post Roe v. Wade stuff at all, which banned almost all abortions later than 20 weeks of pregnancy. So post-Dobbs abortion laws exempt the mother from punishment. When the Dobbs leak happened, there were about 70 pro-life groups that came out and said this is pretty acceptable. The National Right to Life Committee, who has co-signed that letter, said these charges have nothing to do with the Supreme Court's Dobbs decision or Nebraska's abortion law passed in 2010. National Right to Life takes no position on the particulars of state laws regarding the handling of human remains. So this is purely a potential, well, purely a murder case. It has nothing to do with abortion law overall. So she was sentenced to 90 days of jail time, which is very short considering what happened, 50 days with good behaviour, for burning and burying the remains of a baby. So it wasn't for taking the abortion pills. It was for hiding the body by having an at-home abortion. And then the mum has also pled guilty to illegally supplying her with the pills. And the AP published a series of texts between the mother and Burgess about how she can't wait to get rid of the thing out of her body. She says, I will finally be able to wear jeans. And so what ended up happening was the mother and daughter tried to hide the baby's remains, trying to burn them with apple-flavoured charcoal briquettes. It was buried, moved, and reburied. And the final message they shared was, remember, we burn the evidence. So it's not just the criminalisation of abortion, it's the desecration of a corpse.
Right.
And this is being used as a platform to stand on to say, well, women must have unfettered abortion access. I just don't.
5 months. It was 20 weeks. I think you said in that story. I think a 5-month-old baby. I don't know if people know this, but the average, that a baby's able to live outside of the womb is now 21 weeks and a day. They've got a baby who's able to survive that. So that would have been a baby who was almost going to be able to survive on their own. That's discarded in this really devastating way. And it's just an absolute tragedy. And to think that is happening here in the UK as well, you're allowed to abort for almost any reason up to 24 weeks. It's long past viability.
And also, if you claim a mental health issue, you can get it even beyond that. In some cases,
up to 24 weeks for a very expansive way of physical and mental health. Beyond 24 weeks, you're right, in very specific cases, it could also, by the way, up to 40 weeks if the child has any form of disability. It could be Down syndrome, it could be cleft foot or cleft lip, it could be club foot, anything like that that will allow a child to be aborted up to 40 weeks, right, the day before birth.
Yeah, and just for context for anyone who's again a fan of David Starkey, he's always had a club foot. So for people like that, incredible minds, they could well just be being snuffed out and never have a chance to live in the world, which is tragic. And as you said, similar things are happening in the UK, because this was the recent Carla Foster case, which has been mentioned on the podcast before. But just to underscore that there is an obfuscation of the narrative here to try and push towards the decriminalization of all forms of abortion. It's not honest. She was a 44-year-old mother of 3, and she took at-home abortion drugs when she was between 32 and 34 weeks pregnant. Now, again, 24 weeks is the cutoff point. So she lied over the phone to the abortion provider. Yeah. She said that she felt too embarrassed to see a doctor after becoming pregnant in 2019, and that she didn't know how far along she was. Oh yes, you just commit infanticide when you're embarrassed. That's a legitimate reason, of course. So she lied to the nurse at BPAS. We'll come back to BPAS later because they seem to be not too bothered as to whether she lied or not. On a phone call 12 days later, saying that she was 7 weeks pregnant, and she was sent mifepristone and misoprostol. Is that how I pronounce it?
Misoprostol.
There we go. To a home address, and she took the mifepristone on May the 9th, and the other drug 2 days later. And then that evening, she made a 999 call to say she was in labour. So, again, deceptive, and she miscarried. And her daughter Lily was stillborn. Yeah. She was then sentenced to 28 months in prison with 14 months in custody, and then the remainder outside on license after release. But the main thing that happened here was that, and you said this about your piece in the Critic, very few people were willing to say, yeah, this woman deserves prison time for lying to the abortion provider and then killing her baby, which was obviously viable.
And people are using this story to lobby for that law to be decriminalized, for it to essentially become legal to abort through all 40 weeks. So they say, look at this poor woman who was sent to prison for killing her daughter Lily. And what I say to that is that law is in place to protect 2 people in that story. One is baby Lily, who was a beautiful sentient baby, able to survive outside the womb, able to feel the pain of her own death, who was killed by the abortion pills and then had to be delivered because she was so large, and was held in her mother's arms after she had passed. So it's to protect baby Lilies and baby Lilies of the future from, going through that terrible shortening of life, from, to protect their ability to live and grow up and to do all the things that an 8-month-old baby, which is a large developed baby, should be allowed to do. But that bill is also in place to protect women like Carla, and it's easy to go to either extreme in her story, which is just absolutely a tragedy from beginning to end. It's easy to either call her an absolute villain or an absolute victim. And she, what we know from her story is that after doing this incredibly awful deed, she's been haunted by the face of her baby. She has expressed deep grief and remorse, and to an extent that she'll never get over. So, she's out of prison now. She'll always be in prison in her mind to an extent, because she went through that absolute awful trauma of having aborted her own baby, having to give birth to it as a stillborn. The law is in place to protect women from going through that. It's horrendous what she's gone through, and no woman should be going through that. So should this law be repealed and decriminalized? Absolutely not. We need to protect women and babies like Carla and Lily. But there is a law that does need to change, and that's the law that got her into this mess in the first place, and that's from 2021. And that's a law which allows BPAS to send pills in the post to women who have simply called up and said, yeah, I'm less than 10 weeks pregnant. Carla never thought she was less than 10 weeks pregnant. When you have a baby bump of 8 months, you don't think that this could possibly be less than 10 weeks. But because this law, which was instituted during COVID, but now lives on as a successor of COVID, because that allows BPAS to stay on the phone, oh, you're less than 10 weeks, you sure? Okay, fine then. Send it in the post. Nobody has to come into the clinic. No resources are used to give women a scan, to give them a checkup, to give them counselling, say, are you sure? Give them, an ear to listen to say, now, is there somebody pressuring you into this? What's the father got to say? Is he around? Or mom and dad going to help? All of these kind of things. They're not able to have that counselling, that safeguarding, and that medical supervision. So they're now taking these pills at home. Abortion was legalized because they said it had to become safe, legal, and rare. Safe, legal, and rare. Taking pills at home used to be used as a kind of example of something that would happen if abortion was not legal. Yeah. It used to be that, oh, girls will do this in a back alley or in their bathroom and it'll be very dangerous. That's what they're doing now. They're doing it in their bathrooms now by themselves. 16-year-old girls hollowed up in their own, not wanting to tell anybody, taking these pills, which are very, very easy to procure legally or illegally now because of the current law. So this law has enabled that. It's enabled it to be very, very dangerous. clearly increasing numbers of cases which are illegal, and it's less rare than it's ever been in the history of Britain. So this law has clearly failed women, clearly failed children, and needs to be reformed.
Absolutely. But what's actually stopping it getting reformed is, and this is an article very well written by a friend of mine, Georgia, who went on Good Morning Britain to speak about this issue, and they actually cut the part of her interview which said that BPAS has been saying that they don't send these pills out. When she elucidated it, so that this is, media is complicit in covering this up. BPAS actually lobbied to prevent the overturning of this. So in March 2020, they lobbied for the mandatory in-person appointments to be scrapped. So no medical pre-screening before you procure these pills. And because of COVID, this law was passed. Then in November 2020, the government launched a consultation on it, to which 70% of respondents expressed concerns about the inaccurate gestational estimates, so that you weren't before 10 weeks, or that people could frankly just lie. In February 2020, the government announced plans to reinstate the in-person appointments. So these were swiftly thwarted after a coalition of pro-abortion MPs, with BPAS's support, inserted an amendment into the Health and Social Care Bill to overturn the government's decision to end the pills by the post. So this was smuggled into a pork barrel bill meant to be addressing the rest of the NHS, and this law has still stayed in place despite being very dangerous for the women taking it, and of course horrific for the babies it's killing. And BPAS doesn't care about that, and it also doesn't care about when women access it or how, or if they lie to do so, because, and Georgia's got the links in here, BPAS is on record urging for the legalisation of abortion up to birth for any reason. In England and Wales, decriminalisation of abortion would require the repeal of both Sections 58 and 59 of the Offences Against the Person Act and the Infant Life Preservation Act. Doing this would make the Abortion Act in 1967 redundant, thus scrapping the existing 24-week term limit for abortion, making the procedure available on demand for any reason up to birth. And this would leave the baby with zero rights, akin to China and North Korea.
Yeah.
So I actually, when I was at university, I went to an abortion debate that had Anne Farady, who's the head of BPAS, for anyone who doesn't know. I didn't. So when we went, she was arguing for that exact position on stage. And I said, okay, well, what about the baby? If you're arguing for the position of sentience, it's not sentient until it's outside the womb, which is an insane proposition. I said, what about when there was a former Planned Parenthood nurse who is now gone over, I think Abby Johnson, it might well be. She saw on an ultrasound a baby fighting for its life during abortion, and it gave her such a shock that she repented. I said, well, what about that? When the baby demonstrates that it can feel pain, its nervous system has been developed, and it actively resists the abortion equipment, does that not demonstrate a level of human sentience there, and that it's suffering? And she said, I just don't accept that it's suffering. It's no different to an animal. I was thinking, wow, that is a level of callousness I haven't encountered before. So of course they're okay with women lying down the phone, because their goal isn't to help women or to have reasonable restrictions on abortion. Not that I think they can exist. Their goal is just, you should be able to kill a child at any point.
I know.
Like, it's...
Yeah, I think, forget labels, pro-choice, pro-life, pro-abortion, whatever it is. If you care about women, you do not want them being subjected to abortion, especially late-term abortion, especially any. I mean, not only are these pills at postings very dangerous, I think 1 in 17 women who took them, according to an FOI request, ended up being hospitalized anyway because they're that dangerous. So not only do you not care about women's health if you're promoting these things, but also no little girl grows up wanting to have an abortion. It's not an ideal. It's the symptom of a culture where women are told that this, they have to sacrifice their children to succeed at life. It's like a symptom of a culture where, they're told that men don't care about, taking care of their children, and they're going to be left and abandoned on their own, and they have to abort because they can't do it by themselves. Abortion is a symptom of a failed culture for women. So if you care about women, we should all be challenging this narrative and challenging the idea that abortion is the best that we can really do for female empowerment. It's actually a sick joke to say that killing children and undergoing a traumatic procedure, which has a very difficult impact on mental health and other aspects of women's lives, to say that is feminism is just a slap in the face to all women.
Well, yeah, it's the perverse thing of, as we were talking about earlier, the elimination of dependent relationships as the precondition for female autonomy and success. That was Michelle Williams getting up at the Oscars and said, if I didn't have an abortion, I wouldn't have this statue right now. And it's like, well, having a living baby might be better for you and your soul, frankly. But yeah, as you said, it's not the safe in the safe, legal and rare formulation. There was a FOI request. There were 85 NHS trusts that were asked about this, and they found that 10,000 women needed hospital treatment because they took these pills. So that's more than 1 in 17 women. That's 20 a day. The findings also exposed that abortion providers and the DHSC weren't reporting medical abortion treatment failures as a complication, even though at least 5.9% of women using abortion pills needed hospital treatment because of this failure. Around half of these, or 3% in total, required surgical treatment to complete the abortion. So likely because they'd lied about when they procured them and took them too late. Much like with Carla's case, baby Lily needed to be delivered. There's also, GB News found about this, they gave freedom of information requests to 6 ambulance trusts in England, and they found that since the pandemic, since this law was passed, abortion pill-related ambulance requests had risen by 64%. So there is an epidemic going on here in the UK because of this law. And so thankfully, there's been 2 parliamentary responses to it. One has been very good. Probably the best MP in Parliament, about the only trustworthy and good one at this point, Miriam Cates. She's led the fight on getting rid of this because she is a committed Christian and she's willing to take on the hard issues that no one else will care about. But then you have Stella Creasy. And I call Stella Creasy the ultimate devouring mother because about a year before this, she brought her baby into Parliament, despite there being a parliamentary creche. I mean, frankly, good, don't put him in daycare. But she brought it in as a publicity statement and then makes putting abortion without regulations up until birth into the British Bill of Rights her soapbox issue. So I just don't understand how you can countenance that cognitive dissonance. Maybe it's because leftism has made abortion a sacrament to try and alienate you from yourself at this point. But to have this dependent child in your arms that you supposedly love and then say, but if this child was still inside me, I should be able to...
No, it's devastating because Stella Creasy had an opportunity there to challenge a narrative that says, if women have kids, they can't do anything else.
Yes,
she
exactly.
had a beautiful platform to be able to say, look, I'm a mum, I'm taking care of my child. I'm also a competent MP who's able to run my constituency and raise the issues that they bring to me in Parliament. And that would have been female empowerment. If that had been her message that says, look, women, you can, if you are called to do both are possible. That's what empowerment is for those women who do want a career as well as to be a mother. But instead, she's completely contradicted herself in that message and saying, actually, no, we do need abortion because, women want to have careers and glittering, appearances and that there is no way for a woman to succeed unless she kills her children. So it's just such a wasted opportunity from someone who probably calls themselves a feminist. It's devastating to see.
But that's the kind of freedom, autonomy, maximizing feminism that has won out over the 19th century. We're going to valorize motherhood and homemaking feminism that Harrington's written about before. Yeah. And this comes back, and I suppose it's worth finishing on this point. This comes back to what we were talking about in the first segment, which is that the female hero myth has been stripped of its dependent parts that help form your character. And so what kind of narrative are you telling women when they need to sacrifice their child to get ahead? It's robbing them of the sex-specific virtues that embody and embed them in the world and help form your character and make you someone worthy of being taken care of and caring for someone else. And I think you're going to find a hell of a lot more meaning in a family than generating capital for a company that ultimately just doesn't care about you.
That's right. Yeah, no, we've completely lost that. And I think especially this narrative of my body, my choice, that's actually been detrimental to female and male relationships and to the empowerment of women because that, it came in with the sexual revolution. And it used to be before that if a boy got a girl pregnant, they would likely get married. Yes. Some of these marriages don't work out, except a lot of them do. A lot of them, that's, how life works out. They have a few more kids, they raise them together, they take on that challenge together because it takes 2 to tango. And that's the responsibility that each adult had in making that decision, and they raise the child. Now with my body, my choice, that allows men to say, oh, you're pregnant? Oh, well, your body, your choice, your issue. I'm out. You do what you want. So women don't have that safety net to fall back and say, take to a partner and say, we've got ourselves into this situation. How are we going to therefore go on, make ourselves able to care and support this child, able to help each other to flourish whilst being parents, being able to carry out the missions that we personally have too. it's totally, abortion has completely disrupted this narrative that male and female together can be, have a huge, great impact on kids, on society, and on life for each other generally. And now we just have this kind of thought that women could do whatever they want by themselves. We don't need no man. We don't need no kids. All of these things are just holding us back. And if only the world didn't have kids and men, we would all be better for it. And that's not helped anybody. So yeah, I would challenge Disney on that and call them to make, a great movie that empowers families and empowers women who want to make that choice for marriage and kids. And, maybe that would be the next blockbuster that might get them out of this mess.
Yeah, and it turns out that the pills we have women give dire consequences for both the sanctity of infant lives and our relationships. So worth examining that at a legislative level. Thank you for watching that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters. If you enjoyed, why not visit our website where you can get the podcast live from 1 p.m. UK time every weekday, full, uncensored, and for free. And for as little as £5 a month, you can access our extensive library of premium content and help us keep the lights on, with series such as Brokenomics, hosted by Dan, where in the latest episode he discusses his dire predictions for our economic future. And if you'd like to see the rest of the content that Dan and the team are putting out, you can follow Dan on Twitter at @KingBingo_ and the rest of us over at @LotusEaters_com. Until next time, goodbye.